Looking at very important elements so far as data management is concerned. We'll be looking at pivot tables, fundamentals. We'll be looking at conditional formatting. We'll also be looking at how you can create and format charts, and also how you can relate these charts to slicers. This is extremely very important. Very important. Remember, we are just coming from, we've looked at if statement, count if, sum if, count unique, count A. We've looked at how you can go through data, filter, and do all the amazing functions and formulas. Today you will see how powerful pivot tables are. And the reason I brought pivot tables at this time or at this level is to show you and also give you reasons to really appreciate pivot tables, because pivot tables is going to be summarizing data quicker and faster, and pivot tables will be giving you those same formulas but in a different dimension, easier, quicker, and more accurate. Not really more accurate, but just quicker and faster. We'll be looking at some counts again within pivot tables but in a more quicker way. Pivot tables helps to really save time. It also helps to organize your work, even if you are still a learner or if you are still a foundation learner in Excel, especially in data management. So we'll just move ahead to the practicals. So I first of all show you my tool. When you look at this data here, you see that we were able to copy. I've sent this through the Excel on the WhatsApp group. You can download from there. You see that this is data that you have collected from the field. You have collected this data from the field, and you have your year, your month, your organization names, acronym, name of funder, region, and all this amazing data you have cleaned. Now your data is ready to analyze. Just by looking at this data here, you cannot really tell which month has which amount of data, or which organization has which amount of data, or which activity has which amount of data. We've looked at this using count if, sum if, like we said, but now we want to look at it in a more advanced way. It is advanced but very simple using pivot tables. So this is my data in here. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do, I'll move around here. I'll check my data. Always check your data. Which columns are hosting your data. The columns that are hosting this data is from column A right up to column T here. So I'm not going to click out of this space. If I click out of this space, then I'm not going to pick this data here. Excel is not going to recognize the data. But before I analyze this data, I advise everyone, each time you work with pivot tables, always transform this data to tables. Now we just have a raw data set in our Excel sheet. So what I'll do here is I'll just click on my machine, Control T. The moment I click Control T, you see that automatically Excel picks the data. It picks the data, right? Let me cancel. I'll click anywhere around the data, anywhere, and I click Control T. Excel has already picked the data, and then Excel is asking me, does your table has headers? Yes, my table has headers. So I'll click OK. We saw this during when Theodore was teaching. He taught us this technique. Transform it to table. Why are you transforming it to table? We want the data to be more flexible and more table oriented, since we are using pivot tables. That is very important. And then after having turned it to a table like this, the next thing we are going to do is come up here to insert. Remember, excuse me please. Remember I told you that we are going to be using insert, data, and view and preview regularly, and even home. So now we are going to come here and choose insert. The moment we choose insert, you will find two things will appear here. By the end of your left hand, right top, you will find what you see, pivot tables, and I'll click. Now it says I want to manage from pivot table range, because it has already selected that. It will select the range for us, and I'll click this. The moment I also click this, it behaves the same way that it behaves when I click Control T, because it was also designing a table. But now it is designing a different level of table called pivot tables. This table is allowing you now to start analyzing your data immediately. Now, there is something I want you to see here, very, very important. You have new sheet and you have existing sheet. So when you choose new sheet, you are telling Excel that they should move the data from this pivot, from this main table, and take us to a new sheet, because we want to analyze it from a new sheet. I will now come here and I select OK. So you see that what has just happened here is very simple. We have just moved from this main data, and pivot table has brought us here by the action that we did. And then you see this sign here tells you that this is a pivot tables or pivot table. So it says to build a report, choose field from pivot table field list. So this is a field list here. All this it happened just by taking that action we took. And then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play with my mouse around here. It turns to this small arrow with two heads, and then I hold my mouse, my mouse down, and I drag. You see what I'm doing here? I want it to be open. I want to create an open environment for you to see what I'm doing. Now there are three fields here that I want you to be very, very keen about. You have the filters, you have the rows, you have the columns, and you have the values. This is very interesting. With the rows, when you put a data here, it will appear in a row format. With the columns, when you put a data here, it will appear in a column format. With the filters, when you put a data there, it appears in a filter manner. We looked at filter previously, which I taught you that filter is like cooking fufu, and then you have grind your corn, and you're trying to filter what you want to use for that time, and then keep the rest to use maybe in your poultry farm. All the fufu, the corn is useful, but it's not useful in different levels. If you want to make fufu, the chaffs are not useful. But if you want to feed your poultry farm, the chaffs are useful. That is the same thing with filter, because at every point in Excel, there is a data you want to use at that moment. There's another data that doesn't have use at that moment, but will have use in future. Okay, so filter allows you to filter and select what you need. Now, values here simply means anything that deals with numbers will be appearing around your value. This is where you are going to be summing, counting, putting things to average, putting it to standard deviation, maximum, minimum, etc. around these values. Take note of this. And then up here now is where you have the headers of all your columns. Remember, we are just coming from here. So it brings all these headers of these columns here and brings it inside this area of your pivot tables. So pivot tables rearranges your data very easy for you without any stress. So this is what it does. So the next thing we are going to be doing right now is simple. So for instance, you might be asking a question. I want us to look at this data by month. Let's go back to our main data and see. If you look at the column for month, you see that I have 2 months here. I have month January right up to month February. It means that data came in January and also came in February. So now we want to look at what happened in February and January. What we are going to do here, we are going to just click on the month. You see that the moment we click on the month, it automatically brought us to the row. Why? Because the month is dealing with text. The month, we are not counting the text. We are just rearranging in our rows and column. I can come here, it turns to these 4 different cross arrows, and I hold and I drag it right into my columns here, and then automatically you see that the January and February turns now and show me in a column form. If I bring it back here to my rows, it shows me in a row form. That's the work of it. If we do it for organization and other headers, you have the same result. Take note of that. If I bring this month under my filter here, you see that it turns to a filter form. It means that I want to create a scenario where I can be choosing a month per time. For instance, if I click here, you see that it gives me a filter. If I come and select all the multiple items, and I say I want to just see February, and I uncheck January, and I click OK, you see that I have only February here because I've unchecked January. And then you see that my small funnel here show me another sign beside, showing that I have performed a filter. If I want to click all of them, I click all of them and I click OK. and it shows me that all. It means I have clicked all those values are selected. Take note of that. Now, there is one technique with pivot tables. Once you get here, you are just dragging and dropping. So if I click this and I just drag, I drop it out there, it goes back to normal. I wanted to let you understand this. Any question at this point, please? Now that we have looked at that, we want to start asking questions to bring insight from our data. We want to look at what happened with total children according to month. I'm going now to just click my month, and then I'll go now to my total children field and I click total children. You see that automatically the numbers here which sum up to total children will appear under my values here, and then it appears here side by side with my month. So the month of January is telling me that total children had 518, and February is telling me that total children had 528. And when you look at around my value here, there is a small sign here, you see it says sum. So we are now summing. Let's say your manager asks you and say we want to get average children, total children per month. You now come to these pivot tables under this value here, click beside this small option here, this small arrow here, and it says value field setting, and you click. You open this other small dialog box here. Very interesting. You now come here, you have sum, count, average, maximum, minimum, products, count numbers, standard deviation, variation, and so on and so forth. That is for other people who are using Excel for something else. But in our humanitarian context, mostly you find us doing average, find us doing maximum, and also percentages, right? So right here, I'm going to click, I want to find out the average, and I'll just click select my average, and I click OK. You see that automatically it brought us now the average of this. This is very important. We now have the average of January and February. It says 51.8 averagely and also 52.8 averagely, just by changing this option here. If I come again and I click and I go to value field setting, and I want to check the maximum figure or the maximum value under this month, I will just click maximum and I click OK. You see, it tells me that the maximum value is 63 under January, and the maximum value is 65 under February. Assuming that you wanted to check the maximum value per organizations or per different option which we are going to be looking at. So now I can come again and I just drag my value field and I put it away, just dragging and dropping. You see that we go back to normal. I can still come again here and I say, okay, I take the month again and I bring it out under my filters here. Okay, it means I'll be selecting, and then I bring my total children, I select total children, it comes under value here. You see that by default now, it is now showing me that I have filtered it in such a way that it is joining both January and February data and giving me here 1046. Okay, so if I come to this filter here, I can unselect my February and then I click OK. As we saw previously, it now gives me data only from February. I can see it here. If I come here now, I can select even January and I click OK. It sums up the data. But let's see the reaction of pivot tables if I take this same month, which is under that value and filter, and bring it under my row here. You see what is happening, right? It automatically deletes my filters and only brings it here. Let's also see if I put it under here, and I also insist that I also want to bring it under my columns here. Now it allows it also only under my columns and removes it from here. So depending on how you want your data to look like, and practice the art of dragging and dropping when you get to these pivot tables. Don't cram this process. Just be comfortable practicing dragging and dropping. So when you are dragging and dropping, you are seeing how your data is forming here, and then you tell yourself, is this how I want my data to look? Is it how I want to present the data? Because you should already have a plan on how you want to present your data. Maybe what you saw in a UN site, or maybe what you saw other partners doing, or maybe what you saw online, and you like your data to be presented that way. And you can have that example in front of you, and then just dragging and dropping and seeing whether it aligns with that. Once it aligns, then you go with that version, and also you learn that particular art. Please, any question? Now, another amazing thing I want you to look at pivot table here is this. If your manager calls you and say, hey, we want to know the different activities that we are doing and we want to understand the status. We want to understand the status, for instance, and we want to know the different activity. We have looked at status as IDP, host, and returnee, right? I'll come here now and I'll select my activities. Remember that, like I said, we are dealing with text here. So when I select my activity, it will likely go under column or row because these are text. Okay? I'll come here and I select my activity. You see that the moment I select my activity, it already sums up my data here. It gives me data training, distribution of hygiene kits, providing referral pathways, tutoring or teaching. So it already shows my data here. The next thing we want to be looking at now, we want to go now to the figures. We want to check what is happening with total status, right? I want to see from IDP, host, returnee before we see the total status. So what I'm going to do here, depending on what I want to start first, I want IDP to start first. Once I click IDP, you see that it appears under IDPs here. This column appears, or this row appears. When I click host, you see that it appears beside. You see, when I click returnee, it appears, and then I click my total status now. And then I click anywhere out of this table. When I click in this table, it brings back my pivot table fields. When I click out, it takes it off. Now I can take my time to preview this table. You see, I can even present this data like this. It makes my data more presentable and quicker. You see that it is quicker here to do your sum if, or your sum. It is quicker here to do your count. Very, very important. You see, so these are some of the advantages or some of the strength when it comes to pivot tables. So this is what you see most often. They'll analyze your data like this, and then they send maybe to HR or send maybe to the team. They'll just open, and then they are able to take this data now and then fit it into the 5 Ws. Okay, from this analysis. Now, there's also something I want us to see here. If I click inside my data here, and I just come here and I choose a month. The reason I'm choosing month is because this is common with our data. I choose month. Now that I have chosen month, I click outside. You see that it is telling me that under data training, this is what happened in January under IDP, host, returnee, and total status. Under February, this is what happens under IDP, host, returnee, and status. So you see that it organizes our data very, very fluently. Okay, and let's see how it appears in our pivot table field. It means that the activities and the column falls under the activities. I mean the month falls under the activities. Now, let me use another technique. I can take this month and I put it under this filter here. Right? Perfect. And then I click out of this data. And then you see that right here now, I can come to my filters here. And I just say, okay, I want to see what is happening in February, right? And I click OK. You see that it has filtered this data. What I have here now is for January. Or what I have here now is for January. I can still copy this data. Somebody is asking, I can still copy this data like this. Right? And I click Ctrl C. And I come to a new sheet. And then I go to home. And it gives me paste. And then I paste only the numbers. You see, I've just pasted only the numbers here. So as per this data in my system, I just have data for February. I can send this to anybody. Maybe they're asking, hey, I want to see what is happening in terms of activities in February. I'll just send this data, guys, just by doing that simple action. And then I can come here now and label and relabel this area and say activities. You see? Activities. That's it. And then it tells me for that month, this is what is happening. But my pivot table, remember, is still intact. I have not changed anything there. It's still there. I can still come here and I decide to say I want to see what is happening in January. And I also click automatically see the figure have changed. Right? And then I can still copy again and paste side by side depending on how they are asking the data. If I click there again now, I can click all my data. And then it gives me data now for all the February and January. So it could be more months, it could be more activities. There's another thing somebody is asking already. Yes, it is possible to remove my activities from here, bring my month from here, okay? And then it gives me data now for January, February, and then take my activities and instead put it under filters. It's very possible. Okay, and I put it here. Now what is happening here is simple. Now it's telling me that, okay, my data for January and February is already reflecting, but maybe they are asking that, hey, we want to just have what we did in terms of data training in January and February. That is it. I have it for January and February, just for data training. And then you can still copy and paste somewhere else and then change this label here to maybe data training. So this is our data only for data training. I can still filter again, choose another activity, distribution of hygiene kit, what happened in distribution of hygiene kit in January and February, and I have my data here, very quick, very straightforward. So like I said, just imagine that you are in the middle of data and maybe they want the average of returnees, or maybe they want the total of IDP hosts and returnee, and you did not calculate the total before you got here. So what you are going to do is, if you notice in Excel, anytime you are working with Excel, begin to pay attention with your tabs here. How did I know that I can perform an action using the pivot table analyze and the design? Because these items are very visible, they are indicative. This green here shows that those items are asking me, Hillary, where you are, please, if you want to use me. Okay, if you want to do anything where you are now, just use me. So I'm able to just go up here and say that, okay, pivot table analysis is green. So it wants me to take a certain action. So I'm going to come here now and take the action. I'll just click. The moment I click, everything that you see visible here can relate to this table. I can take action to this table by using just these items here. I'll come now to field items and setting, and I click. It now says calculate field, and I click. When it says calculate field, remember we want to find out the total status because we did not calculate this before we got here in our data. So we are going to come here now and put total status, or just put ST, total status. And then it says insert the calculated fields. Which fields do I want to insert? These are the fields: returnee, host, and IDP. It could still be other fields. Maybe you are doing health, protection, wash, any other field. Okay. Now I'm going to select those fields I want to add. I'll start with IDP and then I insert. And I go to my machine, shift and plus. I come to host and then I insert. I go to my machine, shift and plus. I come to returnee and then I insert, and then I now click OK. Automatically it appears here my total status, and then it gives me the data beside here. I can still go here and I choose those fields, calculated fields, and then I say average, okay, average returnee, R. And then I come here now and I say that total status here, which is what we have chosen, this S, insert, divided by, I just click, there's a small button on your keyboard where it has question mark on top. Just click that button and then you find that division sign, and then I'll divide it by the returnee. I'll select returnee and then I click insert and then I click OK. You see that it gives me the average. You see, this is my average. The first one is 2.33, 3.33, 7.6, 6. So this is the average I've just calculated here. So take note of this. So let's try this now. Let's say we want to come here to this particular sum of ST, which is sum of the total, and let's say we want to find out the average now by using this option here, this tool here as we saw. I'll go to value field setting and I choose average and I click OK. Let's see if the data will be the same. Okay, this average here, okay, this average here is not adding up because there's a repetition in my system. I already have the average here, so this one is a repetition. Okay, so yeah, if you don't have any questions, let's just jump in. So I show you conditional formatting. So you see that we have just done the same selection. We have chosen our IDP, returnee, and total status. And I want us to just choose boys, total boys and girls. And then here now we have this data. If I ask you to tell me the greatest value here, you quickly get confused. If I ask you to tell me which value is most, you get confused. Okay, sometimes in your data you want to know specific insight. You want to be able to know what is happening in each location, from each organization, from each area, and all that. So here now I can select the whole of this data like this. Okay, now this is only appearing. There's also something you can do. If I click in this table and I right click, it says it has to show me to hide my value fields. Okay, if I right click, it says hide it. I'll hide it from here. Then this one goes off. Now even if I click here, I cannot see that. Take note of that. So if I come here now and I select this data, and then I come to home. When I go to home, remember I said we'll be using home a lot. There is something here called conditional formatting, and I click. Please try to practice around here. It's very interesting. You see that automatically, if I come to color bars and I go to my color bars here, it already shows me that those values that are high already has green. Those that are middle, they are in the middle, has a kind of light green, and those that are very low has red green. So from this data, I can already start knowing which data is high just from here. I can already know. You see that we are seeing it now very quick. We now know that 120 is the highest, 110, 112, 112, 16, 198. We now know that 36, 35 and 26 are the lowest. So we can look at this list data here, know which organization is coming from, and know where it is relating to. Many times you want to look at this as per the regions or per the communities. Where are we having the list data and why? Maybe your targets were this or that, and you are trying to compare the target and the data and where it's coming from. Take note of this. Now, someone might be asking, how can we undo this? When you select again, go back to home, go to your conditional formatting, and then go to clear all rules from selected cells. It clears all the rules. If I come again and I select my conditional formatting here, and then I go back to home, and then here again I select my conditional formatting, I can decide to choose other options. You see, this now is the data bars. You see, from here, once I see a bar that is very long, I start having attention to that bar. I know that, okay, this bar is more. When I see a bar that is very small, I start having attention to that bar. You see, the one that is long, it starts telling me which figure is high and which one is low. Let's go back to home, and then we go to conditional formatting, and then we clear our rules. So now I can still select. There is another amazing thing here. That group of data bars and also other items that shows you the colors, these are the groups on their own. They are very unique and classy on their own. Now I want to be looking at top 10 items. You see, and I click. Now it says top 10 items. I can say I want to look at the top 5 items among this data, and I click 5 here, and I decide on which color I want to select the data. I can say green fill dark green text. You see, from here I'm already seeing the top 5 just by playing with my data. If I say 6, it adds the number. If I say 7, it adds the number here. I can reduce it from here. You see, so I'm already seeing the top, and I click. So I now have the top 5. I can just send this to management, this data, and I write a small text, and I say, hey management, the data that is painted green, these are the top 5 where we are reaching out to. Someone is asking, must I do it across tables? No, you must not do it across tables. Okay, let me show you something here. If I click here, come here to clear my rules, this practice is good. I can just come here and say, hey, I want to know. Let me go back to our main data and I show you something here. If you look at our main data here, for instance, if I come here, I want to be able to just unhide. I think there was a sheet that I hide here. I want to just hide this, unhide this sheet 2. This sheet 2, oh, there's nothing there. Why is there nothing there? I want to unhide. I want to show you inside a bigger data so you see what we are doing here. Many times when you analyze data or when you are managing information, you get to a position where they want to see where the data, the highest data is coming from in terms of IDP, host, and returning and status. So what you are going to do is, I can decide just to come to the total status and I'll select. and then I go back to home as we saw, and then I go to my conditional formatting, and then maybe they ask you, they want to know the top 5 values that are up, and I'll click my 5. You see that from here, I can already see the top 5 values from here. You see? They can ask you to select the top 6. You can see, they can ask you to select the highest value. You just need to click one, and you see that the highest value is 82, and it appears twice. Right? And then you can decide the kind of color you want it to be seen. Those of you who are, maybe there are people who have issues with the colors of their eyes. There are people who don't like to look at colors and all that. So maybe you might want just your borders to be colored. You can choose your red borders. Okay? You might want just your field to be colored with yellow. You still choose. It's still the same. Okay? You can even finish after seeing the highest value, written it, and then you just click. No need to click OK. You just click cancel. And then you have already seen the value. That's it. And then another thing I want you to see here, which is very important, is that someone is asking, can we also have low values? Yes, of course, we can also have low values. So if I click here again, I'll come to this rule, and then it says bottom 10 items. I click. Now it wants to give me the least value, right? Because it talks about bottom. I want the first least value. I'll click 1. It says 40. So the lowest value among this figure here is 40. We can see it here very quick just by using our conditional formatting. And I want to change the color green. It gives me green, right? And I want to go and check the first 4 or 3 values that are highest. Lowest, sorry. I still have it here, okay? And then I just click cancel. I'm clicking cancel because I don't want us to be going back and forth in doing the clear all value rules. Now, here I can go again to home. And then I go to my conditional formatting here. And then I go to this same rule. And then I can say bottom 10%. And I click, right? And then it says first 10%, and I click bottom, sorry. So these are still the bottom 10%. It means this 40 that is bottom still falls within the bottom 10%, right? So there's another tool here. I can just come here and click undo, and I undo what I did. Remember, we saw that you can go to your access quick bar here, quick access toolbar, and decide to click what you want to see to appear up here to make your work quick, right? We had that in one of the items of our lessons. So those items were put there intentionally because we use them all the time. So we carefully selected those items. So if I come here in home again, and then I go to conditional formatting, and then I go now to highlight cells. Highlight cells. Now I click again. It now tells me cells formatting greater than. So now I want to choose cells that are greater than 50, right? You see, it already starts giving me the cells that are greater than 50. I can see cells that are greater than 20. You see, everyone here is greater than 20. I can see cells that are greater than 59. You see, it selects 59. So you must be doing the figures between the ranges of the figures, between the highest and the smallest. Take note of that, because if I come here and say cells that are greater than 100, it will choose nothing, because I am above this particular rule here, okay? But if I say 80, because it's the highest, now I have 2 80s here. So take note of this, is very important. Remember, we moved from pivot tables, we looked at conditional formatting. Now we want to get into visuals and slicers. So you see how important it is now to use pivot tables to create your dashboards. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to prepare our dashboards. I'll create a new sheet and I'll just put D. Stands for my dashboards. Now I'll come up here to preview. Remember, we saw preview, right? No, to view. Under view here, I want to remove the headers. I want to remove the grid lines. I want to remove the formula bar. Now I have prepared this area for my dashboard. See how clean it is, right? It looks very shiny. Very, very shiny. I'll go back now to my pivot tables. The first pivot tables I want us to create is to find out the data of month against total children. I'll click again inside this data like we saw. Go to insert. We have seen this, right? And then I click there, select. And then it says new sheet and I click OK. And then I'll name this sheet month by children with C. So this is for this, only for these pivot tables. Take note. I'll come and click my month. and then I come here now, and then I click my total children, but I want to see boys, girls, and total children, right? Perfect. That is it. I'll now click anywhere in these pivot tables, and then I go to insert, and then I choose a particular chart. So here I have the column charts. I'll choose the column charts, and then I'll right click here, and then I say hide value field, and then this is where I have it. And then right here now, this is my visual. Now this visual is very exciting to me because there's a lot of things I have to do here. Remember, we said chart formatting. We want to start formatting this chart now. It's part of your lesson today. I'll come here now, just click here, select this option, I go to my machine, I click backspace, I delete that. What I'm trying to get here is to clean this data to make sense, more sense. I'll right click here, it says hide all fuse button chart, and I click, it hides everything. I'll come to this grid lines here and I click, it selects all of them, and I'll right click and then I delete. You see that my chart now is clean. My chart looks very clean. I'll click on that because I want it to go back to normal. I want it to be adjusted. Right click, delete, and then I'll play around my chart here. It turns to this fork-headed cross, and I play. You see, I can move it. Here now, someone is asking where is the value field, where are the values. I'll come to this small cross, and I'll just say data labels, and I put it on because I want to be seeing my data labels, and I'll be comparing from here to here. Total children 58. You see, it is here 58. You see, so from here you see the same values that are appearing here. And then right here now it says chart title. I'll put this on as well because I need it. You see, it comes on. It now says legend, and I can put my legend off and I can put it on. Legend are good because they explain what is happening here. So if I send this data to management, management knows that this color stands for sum of boys, this other color stands for sum of girls, and this one stands for sum of total children. I'll double click in this small title box, and then I clean and I say children. Then maybe you just put CH by month, and then I have created my first visual. And then I'll right click, and then I'll copy it from here, or I can click Ctrl C, then I'll bring it to my dashboard. Remember, my dashboard is Z, right? And then I'll click Ctrl V. I have pasted here to my dashboard. This is my first dashboard, okay, which is children by month. I'll come again inside the main data here. I'll now hide this data. Don't delete this sheet, just hide it, please, or hide it. If I delete this sheet, it will cut the relationship from the main sheet. It will cut the relationship from the main sheet to the other sheet. Okay, if I delete that sheet, it will cut the relationship. So I don't need to delete that sheet, I only need to hide it. Remember that we are going to be creating some interactions. You are going to be creating some interactions, right? Some interactions are going to be created. Take note of that. I'll come back to my main data again. Now I want to look for another insight. Can someone tell us which insight they want us to look for now?
Region by the total number of children.
Okay, region.
Total number of children by each region.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. All right, let's see what happens. We'll go now to our pivot tables. We'll click inside our pivot tables, go to insert, get the pivot tables here, and then we click OK. And then for these pivot tables, we are going to name it regions with R. We'll double click there and we name it regions. Remember that I showed you in the first day, right, how to change these values here by children. You can write any name you want there. That you remember, right? Remember that we were looking at this in the beginning. It sounds very simple, but it's something that we use all the time. I'll come here now and I go to my region and I click my region. It gives me northwest and southwest. And then I'll come here now, check my total children. And just to add to what you have just said, I would like us to also add total status. I'll click, so total status appear by the side. I'll come again here, right click, and then I'm going to hide this value field here. I don't want to see it again. I'll click now inside these pivot tables here that we have created, go to insert, and then now I would like to take the pie chart. This is our pie chart now. Wow, amazing. So now we are just coming from column chart, now we are taking our pie chart. Now I'll right click again as we did, hide all value field buttons, and then I'll come here again now, and I want to put my chart title is already there, my data labels are already there as well. I'll put it on. Now there's something that is happening here. This particular data, this figure is almost the same like this color. So the question is, what do we do? I'll right click to see if there's an option, if there's something I can change, right? I'll come to this small bucket here, and then I go here and I see if I can change something, and I try to change that particular visual site, that part of that visual here. Okay, so all of them are changing. So what I'll do here instead, I'll select this option here, and then I'll go to my home, and then I go to text, and I'll turn this text to yellow, and then I'll bold the text. Now I don't want you to cram this process. I want you to just see, my objective here is that I'm trying to make this data clearer to whoever takes the data. I want it to be clear. I want that when you see the data, you already understand what the data is talking about in terms of figures, in terms of sex. Now here I'm going to say children by regions, right? Children, or permit me, I don't have a sign that shows children by region, right? That's it. Perfect. So that's my children by region, and I'll right click, and then I'll just copy this, or Control C, the short format, come to my pivot tables, and then I paste. You see, now I'm creating my dashboards. I'm preparing this dashboard to send maybe to the UN agency, or to my partners, or to my funders, or to the head of my organization, or to HR, whoever I'm sending to, so that they can look at this data and then begin to make insights, begin to decide the decision they'll take that month, that year, etc.
To create a pivot table, you have to go through that process to attend any visual before you bring it to your dashboard here.
Yes, for each visual you have to create a pivot table and hide it. This applies when you are doing your pivot tables using other sheets, but I'm going to show you another technique doing your pivot table using the same sheet in the same document. That one we are coming soon. That will be the end of our classes. Okay, just summarizing everything, and it's going to be very interesting. But for now, when you want to do your pivot tables in different sheets, that sheet is for one pivot tables, and then you see, and you hide. Now there's something I want to add to your amazing question. Remember that with these pivot tables here, this region, you can be coming here and changing. If I right click, and if I right click inside here, as we saw, and I right click, and I show my few, I can be changing things here. They can, remember that data can change. They can tell you that, hey, instead of this total children, we want to just get maybe just total status, and maybe girls. We want to be comparing total status and girls. Okay, and once you do this, if I go to my, if I come to my this thing here, you see that it automatically changes the data. If you check here, you see that it will change the data. You alter the data following that, because it is still related and linked to this. This is very, very important for you to take note. And then, after having answered that question, we have looked at creating visuals, we have looked at formatting sheets or charts. Now we want to look at very briefly what are slicers. Very important, what are slicers? See what I'm going to do here, very simple. I'll right click here, no sorry, I'll click into this data and I go to data. No sorry, go to insert, because we want to insert the slicer. We are inserting slicers. I'll come here now, we have the timeline, we'll be looking at this some other time, but these slicers now, I'll choose this slicer. When I choose this slicer now, it asks me how do I want to slice this data. I want to be able to slice by organization. I'll click organization, and then I click OK. So now I have the organizations here. So if you ask me on this data, something has happened here. Let's fix this. Let's go back and change it to the yellow. and put this because I want you to be seeing what I'm doing, and I want to make this very big because there will be some changes here that will be happening now. If you ask me and say, hey, Hillary, based on this your dashboard, what is happening in terms of organization A, in terms of regions and month, I'll just click organization A. You see that it gives me data only for organization A, and then the data just for the month and the region. If I come to organization B and I click, you see that this data is changing. This one is not changing, but this one is changing. Take note of that, because this particular data is connected to my slicer. If I come to organization D, I can see what they are doing in terms of
18, 17,
region.
18, 19.
If I come to E, I see what they are doing in terms of region. So I can quickly go through my slicer. Please mute your mute. So I can quickly come here, and then I quickly go through the organizations and I see what they are doing as per region. That is the power of your slicer. Now you might be asking, why is the other visual not interactive when I click my slicer? It's simply because they are not connected. I'll now select my slicer and I right click. It says report connections and I click. Now when I click, it now shows me all the pivot tables that I have created. I will now select all of them because I want them to be part of this slicer, and I click OK. At this juncture now, when I click organization C, all my data are altering, they are changing. If I say organization A, it tells me that this is what they are reaching in terms of region, and this is what they are reaching in terms of the month. If I go to organization B, it tells me what they have done in January and February and what they are doing per region. If I go to C, it automatically changes and tells me what they are doing in January, February, and what they are doing per region. Please, do you have any question at this time? So you see that this is the importance of creating your slicers. Because, for instance, if we come here and we choose like we saw, you see that organization D is just having 198, and it shows that they are doing the work only in Southwest. But if we click in C, the inside of the data shows us that they are doing the work both in Northwest and Southwest, and this is what they are recording in Southwest, this is what they are recording in Northwest. And you see that we can have the insight compared to when the data was just with you, bulk and in a raw format. Remember that your slicers, you can start from any visual to start creating your slicers even before you create the connections. This is very, very important. Also, someone is asking, can we select multiple? Yes, we just hold your control button down and you can select. Okay, I've just selected 2. So it tells me what organization B and C are doing as per these 2 regions. I still hold my control button and I hold it down and I select. It selects the 3rd one. Yeah, it selects the 3rd one. And it tells me what organization B, C, and D are doing in terms of region and month. Okay, and if I want to unselect, I'll just come here and I select and it goes back to normal. And you can turn your slicer, go with it anywhere you want. Now someone is asking a very good question. We can create slicers from other areas, right? I can still select here, go to my insert, select my slicers. I can decide now to say I want to see how the slicer, I want to see the slicers per division, and I click. Right, these are the division now. Now what is happening in Boyo? It tells me what is happening in Boyo in January and February. In Fako, this is what is happening in January and February. In Meme, this is what is happening in January and February. Now we can still connect this with the other visual if we like, right? Right click, report connection, and then select the other visual, right? And then you click OK. Now if we look at Fako, it tells us what is happening. Look at Meme, it tells us, look at Meza, it tells us, we look at Boyo, it now shows us what is happening in Boyo. Okay, in terms of region. So it tells us that in this region, specifically Boyo, in the division of Boyo, this is what is happening in Northwest. So please, do you have any other question? So this is the last part of the training today. We have looked at pivot tables, we have looked at visuals, we have looked at chart, how to format your chart, and we're looking at pivot tables on how to move data from another sheet. Now I want to look at pivot tables, how to do data on the same sheet. So it's the same rule that apply in terms of the other things that you'll be seeing, but the only changes here is that we are going to be doing our pivot tables on the same sheet. So I'm going to click here, go to insert, go to pivot tables, select, and then instead of going to new sheet, I will choose existing sheet. You see? And then it tells me existing, it tells me location. So I want to be organizing my pivot tables from this location. So I'll reference this area here. And then I click OK. And then I want to make this smaller. At least I brought that because I wanted us to see how that looks. So I want us to be doing month against the same thing we have been doing, people. The same thing against children, right? Children against month. That is our first pivot tables. Okay, I'll come again to the same table here. I click, I go to insert. Again, it still selects. I say existing sheet, and then I shift this by the side, and I come again under here, and then I click OK. And under here now, I want to be getting the month. Please mute. The month against the total children. You see? Please mute. Who is my God? Mute, please. So right here, you see how I'm organizing my pivot tables, right? I'll come again under here again. I'll come again, choose my table again. Anywhere, I click inside anywhere, and I take insert. I go to my pivot tables, select my pivot tables. I come again. Now, I want to skip. I want this group to be appearing here, and I choose the existing sheet, and I reference this area, and I click OK. And what I want to be seeing now is regions against, you can choose whatever, right? Just choose anything that you want to choose, anything you want to analyze, right? And then we are good to go. Now I have 1, 2, 3 pivot tables on the same sheet. If I click on the first pivot tables and I go to insert, and I want to use my bar charts, first chart, I click on the second pivot tables, go to insert. Again, I want to use maybe my bar chart now, and I choose this one, and I click on the third pivot tables, and I go to my chart, and maybe now I want to use my column chart, right? You see, I have 3 different visuals here from these 3 pivot tables. The first one here talks about month. So I was looking at the month against children. So I'll come here now, put my data labels on, right? And then I'll right click again, and then I'll right click again on top of these signs, any of these signs here, and then you say hide all few buttons, and then I'll come now to this title here, and I'll likely put month children by month. You see, that's it, and that is it. That's my visual. I can right click this, copy, and then take it now to my dashboard. Remember, we have not yet done our dashboard here, but it's okay, and I paste here because someone is asking, can we also still copy and paste? Yes. I'll come again to the next visual here, and I just do the same, right? This is my bar, and I delete that, click on these items here, and I hide all the value field settings, and then I come to my legend here. You see it says data labels on, and then my legend is also on. This bar now, good. I love this. Now there's something happening with this bar chart here. No, it's fine. I thought there was an issue. There's no issue because it shows my February. It tells me that this data is for February and January, but in my opinion, I don't like the way this data is appearing because I want to see the difference, but it's still okay. It's still very, very okay. I don't think it's an issue. I'll remove this. So now, what is happening in February and January? That's the question we have to be asking. So it means that this visual is not okay for this particular data. I'll come back here in my insert. Okay, and then I'll probably change this. and put this particular donor chart. Okay, so here now, if I click here, I get my legend on. So now it tells me that this is for January, this is for February. So I'm just intentionally making some errors. I mean, doing it like an error to show you that you can alternate. You can look at your visual. If it's not looking good, you can change something, you can add something. You can just keep going, right? Then here now, this small brush, somebody's asking, what is the use of this small brush? It just gives you different options of your visuals, right? Automatically give you different options. If we click the one for this chart here, it gives us different options, right? This is it here. So I'm using the Microsoft 365. So please get your tools, You enjoy managing your data, okay? I mean, invest in your organization, and this is one of the investments you have to do. And many organizations ignore this, and to me it's scary, because you need to, when you have the right tools, you'll be doing this, and then you master it. That's it, you see? So you just have to be flexible. Someone is asking, can we change the color of this? Yeah, you can change the colors, of course. Okay, just click here and you change the colors. That's it. I've just changed the colors. And you can just select one of it and you change just that color of that one. Okay, I can decide to put this other color here. Okay, it's going right. Okay, I can select just one like this, and then I change that color. I decide to change the color of that one. You see? You see, I put this particular color here, and then depending on the color you want, and learn a practice. Always learn to right click and then look at what is there and test it. That is what is going to build you as you work with these tools. Okay, in that set, I think that we are done for today. Thank you. Any question?
So when you reach out through WhatsApp or email or anything, or even post it in the document that we set up. So please just stay in touch if you have questions. We are there. And I think we will just send a poll in the WhatsApp group again to see when you're available next week and what days are best for you. And then, yeah, let's stay in touch and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for participating today.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Adi, please
Thank
do
you.
not forget to share the video, the recorded video for the lessons for today.
Yes, thank you all very much today for participating. Of course, I'm going to finish the video now as quick as possible and share with you, so you follow again and do your assignments. And I'll be telling you what to do with your assignment. And of course, this is the 4th session of the sessions. Excel is remaining one, and I'm really pleased and happy with the feedback I'm already getting.